Hey, everybody. I don't know if you can hear it. My neighbor's kitten is standing at my back door, meowing and meowing and meowing. She does this every day. We're semi-adopted by her. So she spends a lot of time in our backyard meowing when the kids aren't letting her in and feeding her and hanging out with her. So we do both. Today, she was stuck on the neighbor's roof, which was pretty funny. Let's see. Hi, Mr. Matt. We went on a 3-mile run this morning, and now we're working on school and piano. What did you do today, Abby? Abby, wow, nothing like that. So nothing so productive for me. I spent the last week working basically all day, every day on finishing The Story King. And yesterday and the day before, I was starting to feel like there's a lot of sitting, right, for that. And so today I woke up and so I did have a phone call with some people in Singapore at 6 a.m. my time. So I did that call, and that was a couple hours. And then I had breakfast, and then I thought I can just go on a walk. So I went on a real leisurely walk for about an hour. Then I came back and talked about Narnia. There's some folks called Realm Makers that have been having me in to talk about Narnia a couple times a month. So I did that, which I'd actually forgotten I was supposed to be doing that. And that's it. I haven't done any writing today, nothing like that. I certainly didn't run 3 miles. And piano, that's what I should learn to play piano. We even have a piano, but I don't know how to play. Caitlin says, hello. Hope we get to see Hanali this chapter. I miss him. We do, before the end of the chapter, see Hanali. I don't know how major we'll see. So on that note, this is a particularly long chapter, so I'm going to split it in two. We're going to do half the chapter today. Milena says, hey there, hello. And the Sims say, hi. Hey, I got a question for you all. So I just found out that my nephew, who's graduating high school, tomorrow during our regular time, they've opened things up enough that we're going to have a socially distant little graduation party for him. So I'd like to go to that. So we have two options. After today, we have about 2 days worth of reading left. So we have the next half of this chapter. Then there's a very short chapter and a epilogue, and there's like this stuff in the appendix. So we could do one of two things. One is I could read tomorrow live, but do it earlier in the day, sometime mid-morning for me, before the party, or I can just pre-record it and put it up. Either way, you could still see it tomorrow, or we could wait till Thursday and do it at our regular time and just kind of stick with things the way they are. Nobody has to miss it live who usually tunes in, and we could do it that way. So we could skip tomorrow. So the choices are skip tomorrow and then finish on Friday, Thursday, Friday, regular times, or I'll post tomorrow and we'll finish sometime Thursday. And then Friday we could do, I don't know, we could interview myself about writing. I don't know. I don't have anybody scheduled for Friday or anything scheduled. So think about it and just leave a comment and tell me what your preference is. Do you want to skip tomorrow and then we'll just read Thursday and Friday and be done? Or do you want me to pre-record tomorrow or do it early or something like that tomorrow? Think about that and let me know. And then we'll make a call before the end of the broadcast today on that. And if you don't have a preference, that's fine too. Today's chapter is really the last action of the novel. We have a chapter that comes after this that is more of it's not an epilogue. There's still something happening, but it is not dealing with the core problem of the book. And then, of course, there's the epilogue and ending and all. So we're going to do half of the chapter because it's a long one. And this happens to me. What happens is in the climax of my novels, a lot of times I start doing longer chapters with more point of view breaks. So you're going to say we're going to jump back and forth between what's happening with different people. I don't know what it is. It's probably more like a movie. And maybe that's the problem. It happens in my head. So where we left off was Madeline was with her friends and she was saying to them, hey, let's go and try to fix this thing. We're going to go and try to break in to the Tower of 1,000 Years and see if we can get our hands on the Crescent Stone. And they started coming up with a plan. Madeline kind of looks Elenil, so she could, if she put the right clothes on, maybe she could get in. Shula maybe could use the Mask of Passing. Maybe they could pretend that someone is a prisoner. Yennefer wants to come, even though she can't breathe or do much. So a variety of things like that. So, and that's where we pick up in chapter 35, the choice that is coming. Well, you'll see. It's mostly in the second half of the chapter. But here we go. Chapter 35, the choice. To change the world, change first a heart. That's a quote from the Garden Lady. Jason rode on delightful Glitter Lady's back through the crowded streets of Farseeing like a king. Are you sure you don't want to ride up here? Jason asked Bylea. I do not wish to be so conspicuous, Bylea said, but Jason had already seen several people take note of her cockery clothing and her double-bladed staff and give her a wide berth. It's not every day you get to ride a rhino, Jason said absently, watching the tower. Unicorn, I mean. They were at the bottom of the stairs, quite away from the massive garden at the base of the palace. They were supposed to wait until Madeline, Shula, and Yennefer reached the main entrance. If they entered without any trouble, Jason and Bylea would follow a little way behind. If there was a problem, they'd make more noise and see if that helped them slip inside the tower. An Elenil, this isn't a very detailed plan, obviously. An Elenil guard stopped them. He glanced at Bylea, who had hidden her staff in her sleeves. You cannot bring weapons into the courtyard unless you're Elenil. Jason flexed his biceps. You talking about these guns? The guard clearly had no idea what Jason was talking about. Bylea gave him a quizzical look too. Whatever, that was comedy gold, fine. He went back to the original plan. I don't have any weapons, sir. That was true. Jason wasn't carrying a single weapon. The guard gestured to D. This unicorn is a war beast. Ha! Jason shouted. This is a peacetime unicorn. I do not know what this means. It means she is retired from military service and is now a civilian unicorn. The guard's hand fell onto the hilt of his sword. You cannot go farther unless you shrink your unicorn to its smallest size. And where is your Elenil guide? Jason pulled the magic dial off the saddle. I've got the ambiginator right here. The only problem is, I also have this. He held up a small, smooth stone. The guard looked at it dispassionately. A stone? Why is that a problem? Well, you know how magic works, right? If something gets small, something else has to get big. I accidentally brought along the stone that gets big when Delightful Glitter Lady gets small. I see, the guard said. Oh, there's Madeline, Bylea said. She wore a tightly bound Elenil sheath dress. Another Elenil woman he didn't recognize stood beside her, a small skim body in her arms. A guard had stopped her and was saying something, but they were too far away to be heard. A flurry of birds flew into the square, squawking and calling out as they delivered messages to their various recipients. The guard Madeline was talking to drew his sword. Madeline didn't know why, but he knew what it meant. It was time to shout the secret phrase he had taught Bylea at their signal. It was time for them to make their loud, impressive, over-the-top distraction. He cleared his throat and shouted at the top of his lungs, "It's morphin' time!" All right, now we switch over to Madeline. With her hair pinned up and the Elenil dress on, Madeline barely recognized herself. The eyes give you away, Shula said. We should remove the neck. The high neck of the dress could be unpinned. Fernanda stood in the mirror across from them, watching closely. They weren't in the knight's upper room, so she couldn't speak, only make motions to them. Another side effect of her curse. She made it clear, though, that she agreed with Shula. With the neck removed, however, the silver tattoos that had been spreading across Madeline's body were visible. They coiled up from her collarbones, working their way up her neck and toward her chin in the front, the nape of her neck in the back. No one ever shows their tattoos, though, Madeline said. Shula pulled Madeline's hair back, pinning it up. Only the Elenil have access to this much magic. It's rare to show it off, especially if someone other than Elenil are around, but it would be unthinkable for a human to have so much magic, and it will distract them from your eyes. Fernanda nodded her approval from within the mirror. Madeline studied her reflection in a different mirror. Her skin was not pale enough to be Elenil, and her hair had too much yellow in it. Most of the Elenil had blonde hair that leaned towards silver. Her eyes were definitely a distraction, the wrong blue, but she might pass if no one studied her too closely. Shula opened her knapsack. Now this, she said. She held up the shining mirrored artifact known as the Mask of Passing. She held it up to her face and tied the ribbons behind her head. Her clothing, jeans and a long-sleeved shirt, flickered, then became a light violet Elenil dress. Her face reappeared, only not dark any longer. It was similar to Madeline's own skin color. Her hair was golden blonde rather than black. You look surprisingly like me. The woman who was not Shula nodded. The mask causes you to see someone like yourself. That's how it works. Anything that might make you think I'm the other goes away, so you know I'm the same sort of person you are. You look human still, though. To you, to the Elenil, I'll look like an Elenil. To the skim, a skim. We should test it on the way, Madeline said. That would be wise. They stopped at a market stall a few hundred meters from the main tower. Shula hailed an Elenil soldier and sent her to send a message to the wall asking if there was any danger. The soldier sent a bird without hesitation. Yenel had tried to walk, but it had been too much. Madeline carried Yenel perched on her back. Shula would take over when they reached the tower, they decided, and carry her in her arms. They planned to say, if stopped, that they were looking for a healer. They were stopped, of course. It wasn't Yenel who was the problem. At least, not at first. Is that a sword, miss? Madeline hesitated. The sword of years, wrapped in cloth and rope, hung from her shoulder like a purse. Yes, she said. She did her best imitation of Galenia. We Elenil are allowed to walk armed wherever we please. Of course, the guard said, his eyes lingering on her neck. The Archon has requested, though, that we catalog the weapons as they come through. Would he recognize the Sword of Years? She didn't know. If he did, they wouldn't make it into the tower, let alone to the top. They wouldn't get to the heart of the skim. This girl is in distress, Shula said smoothly. We seek a healer. Do not have time for pleasantries. The guard frowned. To call the Archon's order a mere pleasantry is a grave insult. He glanced at Yenel. Is that a skim girl? She looks almost like a human. She is gravely wounded, Shula said. Galenia herself has ordered us to bring her, Madeline said, taking a chance. The guard looked over his shoulder. Galenia is at the ceremony within, he said. As is any Elenil of consequence, Madeline snapped. The guard stepped backward as if she had struck him. She could see the truth of her own words in the shocked look on his face. The guard started to step aside, but just at that moment, a flurry of birds circled the tower. Hundreds of them flew past in a great swarm, knocking the mass of passing from Shula's face. It clattered to the ground. The guard unsheathed his sword despite the storm of birds. What trickery is this? He shouted. His gaze met Madeline's eyes and his own widened. You're no Elenil. A small yellow bird perched on his shoulder. Lieutenant, it said, the skim have breached the walls again. It is full daylight, the soldier said. They pour through the walls like water. Pray they do not drown us. Breakbones rides at their head upon a gray wolf, and the black skulls ride beside him. May the majestic one protect us. Shula bent for the mask, but the guard stopped her. I do not know what game you play, but none of you three may enter. She'll die, Madeline shouted, pointing at Yenel. Skim die, the guard said. Such is their fate. The sudden bellowing cry of a runaway rhinoceros echoed across the square. Shula hoisted Yenel onto her back. Madeline grabbed Shula's hand, and they ran past the terrified guard and into the tower. Whatever message the cloud of birds had brought, the Elenil guards had taken a sudden interest in Jason and his rampaging unicorn. He burst past 15 or so guards without any trouble. He pulled Dee up short when a row of Elenil appeared ahead, each on one knee, with a spear shaft pushed into the ground, the points ready to pierce the rhino's chest. He couldn't see by Leia. She had slipped away into the crowd. "Halt!" one of the guards shouted. "We already halted," Jason said. "Don't come any closer," another shouted. "We're not moving." Madeline and Shula had made it into the tower already. That was the main point of this distraction. But it would be better if he and Bylea could get into the tower too, to help them get to the top and retrieve the heart of the skim. Another flurry of birds sped through the crowd. One of the guards shouted, "The skim have breached the outer walls!" A howling sound came from the west just before a monstrous wolf loped into view, breakbones on its back. "Wu Song," he called, pulling his wolf to a stop. "The Elenil have invaded our territories and murdered our people for the last time. We have come to destroy them and retrieve the heart of the skim." "I'm pretty sure we called dibs," Jason said. "Only we're going to do the opposite. We're here to destroy the heart of the skim and retrieve the Elenil." The massive skim dismounted from his wolf. "You must not destroy the heart. It is ours. It is not yours to do with as you please." As he spoke, the black skulls arrived. "Hey," Jason said, "good to see you all. Before anyone kills anyone, I just want to remind you that I go to the same high school with at least one of you, and I think school spirit should count for something." The antelope-headed black skull spoke, and despite the magically modulated voice, Jason could recognize Darius's voice beneath it now that he knew who it was. "Return the skim artifacts, and no one need die." "Hi, Darius," Jason said. "I feel like we're basically on the same team here." Breakbones laughed. "Unfortunately for you, Wusong, I have made a blood oath to murder you." There's no time limit on that, though, right? You could wait until I'm 130 years old. An arrow blossomed in Breakbone's shoulder. Bylea appeared from behind a column. She didn't say anything clever. She wasn't one for talking needlessly in battle. She did, however, unsling a massive bag from her shoulder and throw it to Jason. It fell open, revealing a huge collection of weapons. Jason felt intimidated by the fact she could throw it. He pulled out a sword, his magic flowing into it, and shouted a battle cry. The Elenil and Skim met like competing waves, with Jason and Dee between them. Back to Madeline. "These plates fly," Madeline said, placing her feet on the floating panels that had taken her to the top of the tower the last time she had been here. "You dare to bring a skim here? On this of all days?" It was Rondello, dressed in beautifully brocaded white clothing from head to toe. Evernew, the stag, stood beside him. "She's ill," Madeline said. Gilenia pulled off from the crowd of elaborately costumed Elenil. "This is a funeral," she said firmly. "A rare occurrence for us Elenil. A certain solemnity is encouraged. Not only that, but it is the funeral for Vivi, the father of Hanali. You of all humans should respect his loss. I will attend to the skim girl, if only to keep you from interrupting." Despite Madeline's protest, she tried to take Yenel from Shula's back. Shula stepped away from her, refusing to let her touch Yenel. Galenia studied the girl more closely, tracing the lines of the tattoos. Her eyes widened and her face snapped back toward Madeline. "What is this? How did you come to find this girl?" "How did the Elenil come to find her?" Madeline said fiercely. Shula spoke in a quiet, calm voice. "Go back to your funeral and leave us be. We don't want to harm you." Galenia looked at them more carefully. "Why, Madeline, you're dressed like an Elenil. Shula appears to be... Ah, but what's that? The mask of passing?" It hung from Shula's hand. "What mischief are you two up to?" Madeline's jaw clenched. She slung the package on her shoulder to the front and unwrapped it. Rondello and Galenia watched in curious silence. When the cloth fell away, Rondello gasped. Madeline took the rusted, nicked, dull blade and slid it into the scabbard. When she pulled it out again, the blade vibrated like a tuning fork, bright, polished, and sharp. The sword of years sang for the blood of those who had benefited from the death of Skim people. Rondello's sword flashed, and the point fell toward Shula. Madeline, do not try anything. That blade, Galenia had backed away from Yenno. That is a magic blade, Rondello. It is called Thirsty, among other names. If there's a healing spell to counteract that blade, I do not know it. Even at the height of my powers, if Madeline were to cut an Elenil with this blade, I would not have the powers to reverse it. The sword hummed in Madeline's hand, the edge of the blade pulling her toward the Elenil. She felt its rage, felt its desire to drain them, to drain all of them. Stand on the plates, she said to Shula. Shula edged away from Rondello and toward the hover plates. You will have to take the stairs, Galenia said. Archon Thenity is no fool. He'll not speed your way to assassinate him. Assassination was not the plan, but Madeline felt the sword hum with glee at the thought. Still, it made sense that the Archon's magic would not help them to the top. Let me help you, Galenia whispered. There are those of us who would see the current Archon replaced with someone younger. Shula stepped behind Madeline. Perhaps as a hostage, she said quietly. Good idea, Madeline said. Rondello, give Shula your sword, or I'll run Galenia through. That's right. Good. Now, Galenia, up the stairs. Galenia tipped her head slightly. A pleasure. The sword of years pulled in Madeline's hand. She hoped she had the strength to keep it from striking. Meanwhile, Jason, delightful glitter lady, frolicked among the warring Skim and Elenil with joyous abandon, and Jason shouted and tried not to fall off. The Elenil fought with the terrifying certainty that no wound given them was permanent, and the Skim with a desperate anger. Bylea struck among them like lightning, wounding Elenil and Skim alike if they came too close to Jason. The Elenil were confused about whose side Jason and Bylea were on. As a Skim came up behind her as she knocked her bow, and Jason brained him with the hilt of his sword. The Skim went down hard, and Bylea gave Jason such a warm smile, he almost lost his grip and fell from the rhinoceros. Just as they fought their way through the lower entrance, a wind kicked in. It howled through the palace compound, blasting them with sand. Jason covered his face. If they had broken into the tower a moment later, he might well have been blinded by the sand. But as it was, the walls of the tower had protected them. Sandstorm? Jason called. Bylea, what is going on? Everyone stopped fighting. Floating like monstrous columns through the melee were 15-foot-tall creatures covered in wings. They did not turn, and they each had 4 faces, each one directly facing one of the cardinal directions on a compass. To the east, a face like a lion. To the west, an ox. To the north, an eagle. And the southern face was that of a human being. The wings sparkled, or on closer examination, they didn't sparkle. They blinked. The wings were covered in jeweled eyes, and as they blinked, the patterns on the wings moved like a school of fish. Karobem, Bylea said, wonder in her voice. They come to watch some story which is about to unfold. The last time they came in such numbers, it was the fall of Ezerbean. Jason let out a war whoop. That must mean we're about to win. The people of Ezerbean did not win, Bylea said. Even now their city is a haunt for jackals. Oh, Jason said, good point. A barefoot girl in clothing that was little more than a sack limped into the center of the battle. The Karobem did not move or speak or make a sound, but Jason knew with a deep certainty that the Karobem knew this girl, that they were in fact here because of this girl. She stood at Dee's feet and looked up at Jason. There was a cactus, she said, born in a city. It lived in a pot upon a counter. It did not grow large, it did not flower, until it returned to the desert. There it lived a long and happy life, and the desert and the cactus and the sun and the moon and the water and the sand lived happily together for many a year. Jason shrugged. Okay, thanks, I guess. And now we fight some more. There was silence from the assembled warriors. Jason slid off Dee's back and stood in front of the limping girl. Breakbones stalked among the warriors, moving toward the tower entrance. Bylea stepped toward him, her double-bladed spear at the ready. Wait, Jason said. I have a better idea. He snatched the pebble out of his pocket and threw it into the tower doorway. He grabbed the embiggenator and turned Dee all the way to kitten-sized. She let out a plaintive squeak as the tiny pebble became a door-blocking boulder. Bylea squeezed his arm just below the gold armband she had given him. I would rather a clever warrior than a strong one, she said. Jason blushed. In the middle of a battle. How embarrassing. He leaned toward her. They're working to move the stone already, she said. She was right. The stone shuddered, and he could hear the shouting of the skim outside, Breakbones' voice piercing through. Let's get up the stairs, he said, running ahead of Bylea. She called his name, and he stopped to find her pointing at the ground. Delightful Glitter Lady struggled to get over the first chair, first stair, her tiny war cry lost in the cavernous room, but she squeaked again, scrambling for the next stair. Aw, Jason said, so cute. Come here, Dee. He scooped her up and settled her into his own pocket. The sword and the bag of weapons Bylea had thrown to him were all discarded on the ground now. He sorted through it, searching for a lighter sword. He found one, tried to lift it over his head with one hand, and almost fell, and the sword went clattering to the ground. He dug through again until he found, well, he wasn't sure if it was a small sword or a long knife. He lifted it above his head and shouted, "To war!" Bylea followed him up the stairs. The strange, limping girl followed too, silent and watchful. Meanwhile, Madeline and friends. The heart of the skim. They stood in the glass room at the top of the tower. The stone was on its pedestal. It was the true stone, not the ship-sized stone that hung outside. Their journey had been easy, suspiciously easy. The Elenil had fallen out of Madeline's way when they saw the Sword of Years in her hand. Galenia had helped, shouting there'd be no healing for any who opposed the sword. No doubt it also helped that having an Elenil funeral taking place at the base of the tower, near immortals being reminded of their mortality, turned out to be cowards in battle. Madeline put her hands on the stone and lifted, but it wouldn't move. Why can't I pick it up? Only certain of the Elenil can remove it, Galenia said. You're one of them, Shula said. It wasn't a question. It would be an act of treason for me to put the crescent stone in your hand, Galenia said. The black and purple energy moved inside the stone, almost like water trapped in crystal. Madeline strengthened her grip on the Sword of 10,000 Sorrows. She lifted the blade. I don't need to hold it, she said. You don't understand, Galenia said, falling in front of Madeline, blocking the stone. Killing the Archon, that makes sense. Let someone else take his place. Perhaps someone more understanding of the skim. Perhaps that would be wise, but Madeline, if you destroy that stone, you destroy the Elenil. If you destroy the Elenil, my dear, believe me, this is true. You will destroy the skim, the Aluvorians, the Pasticians, the Megrim, all the people of the Sunlit Lands. I do not claim the Elenil to be without fault, but you must understand we are the foundation of this society. All else is built on top of our work, our city, our magic. Madeline's tattoo was pulsing now, linked to Yenneil in a way she hadn't felt before. She could feel the magic guzzling, pulling at Yenneil, siphoning her breath away and into Madeline. The skim girl slid from Shula's back and stared at the source of all their trouble, her hair disheveled and half covering her face. From where they stood in the glass room at the apex of the tower, Madeline could see the chaos at the base. Fire had broken out somehow, and the strange creatures Galenia called the Karobem hovered unmoving all around the tower floor, some of them on the stairs, a few floating in the center of the tower. She could see Jason and Bailea running up the stairs, Skim close behind them. They were almost to the top. She hesitated and lowered the sword. A Skim came slowly across the glass bridge toward Madeline. It was one of the servants of the Archon. She remembered meeting him, but not his name. He was dressed like an Elenil. Madeline understood now that he was wearing his war skin, but it had been modified to make him look powerless, like less of a threat. He could have merely taken on his other form like Yenel's. Instead, they had kept him in his fierce battle skin and humiliated him. They had cut off his tusks. Even in war, he would be unimpressive now. She did not remember his name because he was not someone to be remembered or to be seen. He was a decoration in the living quarters of the Archon. "Miss," he said, and his voice was raw, "my lady Galenia says all will be lost, but they have taken everything from us. What more is there to lose? They have even taken our language." "Taken your language? What does that mean?" "Does it not seem strange that we diverse people speak the same tongue? We're all speaking the Elenil language through means of their magic. When you break that stone, those who have known their mother tongues will speak them again, but my children and grandchildren will know only Elenil. I speak it only through magic. We'll not be able to speak to one another. You are not speaking your native tongue either, nor your friends. When magic ceases, our language will be all but dead, with only the elders knowing it well." Madeline, wide-eyed, turned to Shula. "You're not speaking English?" "I don't know English," she said. "Only Arabic and French." Maddie turned back to the Skim. "Are you saying to destroy it or not?" The Skim bowed his head. "Perhaps once all has burned, my grandchildren will rise from the ashes." Madeline lifted the sword over her head. "Yenel?" The girl nodded, a fierce look on her face. "You don't understand!" Galenia shouted again. "The magic of that sword cannot be sated. It will destroy the heart of the Skim completely. Madeline, please, listen to reason." Shula grabbed Galenia and pulled her from in front of the stone. The sword came whistling down, and a fierce joy radiated from it. It smashed into the stone. The heart of the Skim shattered into 100,000 shards, which flew like shrapnel through the glass room. Nothing happened. Nothing changed. Madeline took a deep breath. Yenel struggled for oxygen. "It was a fake," Shula said. Above them, the giant facsimile of the Crescent stone still hung over the tower, crackling with power. Madeline gripped the sword tighter. She knew somehow where the true stone must be. The Archon. He would be carrying it on his person. She had a sudden memory of the first time she had seen him without his sheet. She remembered the choker he'd worn, with what she had thought to be a miniature facsimile of the Crescent stone. Of course he would keep it on him. Now that she knew, it seemed so obvious. She spoke to the old Skim servant on the bridge. "Take me to him." The Skim bowed his head and shuffled across the bridge into the quarters of the Archon. Okay, I think we'll pause there. We will finish this chapter next time. Yeah, the time after that, we will do the rest. Okay, here's what I think. I think we'll skip tomorrow. That'll be better for me anyway, because I'm not sure how long, especially with all the protests, it'll take us to get down to where my nephew's party is. And then we'll pick up on Thursday at our regular time and Friday at our regular time. And Friday will be our last day in the Crescent Stone. I think we'll have time to do some questions and things Friday too. So if you want to do like little interview time, we can totally do that. Would love to do that. It'd be fun. So be thinking about that. And then let's see. Marie says, always interesting to hear correct pronunciations of names. I always botch them in my head. Loved both the Crescent Stone and the Heartwood Crown. Thank you. Yeah, I know. My own kids disagree with how I say Bailea. They say Bailea, which might be correct. I don't know. I haven't been to the Sunlit Lands myself. It's all been told to me by Jason, and as you know, he botches names left and right. Um, yeah. So anyway, let's see. Kirk says a good chapter for today. Yeah, yeah. I noticed different things. You know, it's so interesting writing. It was so interesting with all the stuff going on right now. The themes of these books of Madeline keep saying she's unable to breathe, right? And everyone's coming around her to try and fix that, which I think is a normal human response. When we hear someone say they can't breathe, we immediately put everything else aside and try to help. There are things about rebellion. There are things about what do you do with power structures that are doing things that you think are wrong? How do you interact? And one of my big things, and you'll see this in the Crescent Stone, in the Heartwood Crown, you'll see it in the Story King. I really believe that part of my role as a writer is to help us expand our imaginations of how we can deal with injustice. What I mean by that is the American, particularly the American, but really the Western mythology of violence is that the way that we achieve our goals when confronted with injustice, that the best way to deal with injustice is with violence. I don't believe that. And I've been shaped to believe it my whole life by movies, by books, by sermons, that it is through violence that we can find peace. And I don't think that's true. Rarely true. Anyway, Thursday, when we see the end of this chapter, we'll see that Madeline is put in a position where she needs to make that choice. Does she take a path of violence or a path of capitulation to injustice? That's what's laid before her. Are you going to give in to injustice and allow injustice to continue, or are you going to take a path of violence to try and overthrow injustice? And Madeline has to decide if there's, in that binary choice, something she desires to do. So we'll see where Madeline goes. For those of you who don't know, we'll see what she decides there. And some of you already know. Marie says Balia also. That might be correct. Do you all say Balia? That would be good to know. I actually have a pronunciation guide that I had to make for the audiobook somewhere around here. I was reading it the other day and realized that I might have put one in incorrectly. Lily Me says, D the pocket unicorn. Unicorn, smiley face. Originally, in the original draft, D could only go down to the size of a small dog or like a medium-sized dog. And my publisher or my editor, Sarah, kept saying, are you sure she can't go a little smaller? Like, are you sure she can't go to the size of like a teacup kitten? And I was like, I don't think so. But like the more I thought about it, I was like, why would you not want a teacup size unicorn? Everybody does. Everybody does. Yeah. So, okay, friends, Thursday, we'll read the rest of this chapter. And if you can't wait, it's okay. It's okay to read ahead. Thursday, we'll read the rest of the chapter. Friday, we'll read the last chapter and the epilogue, and we'll look at some, probably not all, but some of the things in the appendix. And also, if you have questions about the Crescent Stone overall, about me as a writer, your own questions about getting into writing or how do you do certain things, whatever, we'll do those on Friday too. Well, let's do a little party Friday. Maybe we'll go a little longer and just hang out a little bit. Even if some of you want to come on live, I can bring some of you onto the video if you want to. What you'll need, I can put it in the comments when we're together. What you'll need is headphones so that we don't create an echo, and the ability, well, a camera. I'm just using the camera in the laptop for it. So if you want to even come on live Friday and ask questions, we can do that. It might be fun. A few of you at a time. So thank you, everybody. I will see you Thursday. In the meantime, be safe out there. take care of each other, take care of the people around you, whether they're from the same political party or another, whether they're from the same ethnicity or race or another, whether they're police officers or people protesting. Let's take care of each other. There's nothing as precious as human beings on this planet. So let's take care of each other. All right, friends, I will see you Thursday. Thank you. Talk to you then.